Hi, I'm Siddons, and I am happy to explain to you my training philosophy. Basically, the training philosophy that I'm about to talk to you about, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So I am not insulting anyone's intelligence. I have clients who are 3 and clients that are 95, and I say the same thing to everyone. So the story is that I worked for a guy by the name of Pete in San Diego in the mid-90s, and Pete's story is that he was in Vietnam in the Marine Corps and stepped on or near a landmine and literally blew out part of his hamstring. So the Marine Corps put him through surgery, put him through physical therapy, and said, "Okay, you're all better." And he said, "No, it still hurts." And they said, "Well, that's too bad. It might be psychosomatic, or, basically you're just on your own." So the story is that he went and bought an anatomy book, opened to the first page, looked at Mr. and Ms. anatomically correct on the first page, and then looked at himself in the mirror and compared the two. And he found that he looked a little bit different than the picture in the book. So then he went out and investigated various disciplines of Western and Eastern philosophy, kind of pulled what he liked from all of them, and experimented on himself, and he found that the more he looked like the picture in the book, the better he felt. So then his friends started coming to him and saying, "Hey, I've got this back, I've got this neck, I've got this knee, I've got this ankle, I've got this wrist, can you help me?" And he said, "Sure." Fast forward 20 years, I moved to San Diego. I had the luxury and the good fortune of working directly with him for 2 years. And in that time, I worked with 5 people a day for an hour and a half and got to know probably a third of the medical dictionary in terms of symptoms and diagnoses. So here is how I think bodies should work. First of all, we're going to look at your body as an entire system. So we're going to look at shoulders and hips and knees and ankles. So remember, this is very simplistic. If we were just to connect the dots and draw a building, here's the ground floor, here's the front door, and here comes gravity represented by the arrow. Gravity should be able to travel through the floors of the building and disperse with the forces of the ground because the floors of the building are all stacked on top of each other. Buildings are not built like this. Leaning Tower of Pisa. Main reason why Leaning Tower of Pisa would fall over. Okay, so forget about the building for a second. Turn this building back into a body. Here is your head, here are your shoulders, here are your hips, your knees, and your ankles. Again, gravity should be able to travel through all the joints of the body and then disperse with the forces of the ground, not only from the front, but also from the side. So we want your ear, over your shoulder, over your hip, over your knee, over your ankle. That's just gravitationally advantageous. Gravity can travel through your body without spending one time in more than one joint or another. So this is where we want you to be. This is where most people are in the Leaning Tower of Pisa category. Maybe one shoulder's a little higher, maybe one hip's a little higher, maybe one knee goes in, one foot goes out, one knee goes out, one foot goes in. Not so happy over here in the Leaning Tower of Pisa category. Or from the side, you look like what I call the classic basketball coach. So you've seen basketball coaches on the sidelines, and there they stand, kind of leaning forward. You see their head forward, their hips are kind of leaning forward, and they're just kind of focused on the game. The unfortunate part about that is that here is their head coming forward, and your shoulders want to be directly underneath your head, but they say, "My gosh, head, if you're going to be way out there, and we go out there with you, then we will start tipping the body forward." So what it does instead is counterbalance and goes back. Now your hips say, "All right, shoulders, if you're going to be way back here, if we also go way back here with you, we will tip the body over backwards." And so instead, they counterbalance and come forward. Knees say, "Gotcha, hips, we're headed on back," and feet say, "Oh, for gosh sake, somebody's got to be underneath those shoulders." So here we will go, and then we're on the line of gravity that way, but notice everything else is off. Now, that in and of itself isn't necessarily a problem, but you mix up the classic basketball coach with the Leaning Tower of Pisa, sometimes to me it's just a matter of time. So if we look at the whole skeleton, and I ask the question, of those 4 joints, shoulders and hips and knees and ankles. Which do you think could potentially provide the body with the most strength and stability? Here's how we would kind of rule out various joints. So, we know that we have two types of joints represented. We have a ball and socket joint in the shoulder, a ball and socket joint in the hip, and a hinge joint in the knee and a hinge joint in the ankle. Does it make sense that a ball and socket joint can move in multiple directions, and a hinge joint is just like a door? It's only supposed to move in one direction. So does it make sense that a ball and socket joint would have more potential simply because it's designed to move in multiple directions? If that makes sense to you, it makes sense to me. And that means we can knock off the hinge joint as the #1 choice for the main joint that we will focus on in terms of strength and stability. So that means we can knock off knees and feet as contenders for the answer. We've now narrowed it down to shoulders and hips. Most people can take their arm and spin it around very easily. Most people cannot take their leg and spin it around as well as they can their arm. With all of that mobility in the shoulder comes inherent instability, which is why shoulders sublux and dislocate and separate. And that happens to hips too, but just not as frequently. So, by process of elimination, we arrive at the hips as our main focus to start with. To me, if you have two good strong hips, you're all set, and the rest of the body will come along. This is where I want to focus most of the work in the body. Hips are designed to move, hips are designed to help you continue to move around. There's a big fascination with core strength currently in the fitness industry. Core strength, core to me is stomach and back. Those muscles are important for stability, but they do not help you move better. They don't aid in locomotion. So what we want to do is make sure that the locomotion muscles are working out well. Okay, so now, if we look closely at the hips, here is a picture of the hip joint themselves. And I will draw them schematically for you. Here comes a hip, here comes a hip. And here's your ramrod straight spine, balanced nicely in between them. So, I like to describe the spine as a series of Oreo cookies. The cookie part is the bone, the double stuff is, cookie part is the bone, double stuff is the, double stuff is the disc. So, you got a ramrod straight of Oreo cookies balanced nicely in between two nice level hips. Notice that makes a 90-degree angle. All is well. This is ergonomics. This is what they're looking for, 90-degree angles. Okay, now, what would happen if one of those hips broke that horizontal plane and came here? Your spine initially would have to come over and line up in between those two hips. Unfortunately, you have this head on top of the end of your spine, and the eyes look at the horizon and they say, the world is no longer level. So it's not so happy here. So the spine decides to wiggle over here, and now your eyes are level with the horizon again, but now unfortunately you have this little hoop-de-doo that's not allowing your spine to look straight anymore. So here's your scapula. And you could name it any one of millions of things. You could call it scoliosis, you could call it spondylolisthesis, big mouthfuls of diagnoses. And lots of people they'll say, well, you know, I have fill in the blank. And I'll say, that's nice. No matter what your symptom is, we want to make sure that you are working off of a nice level platform. Most people have a less than level platform. In fact, I haven't met anybody in the last 15 years with level hips. So I say, you know what? Let's at least eliminate the possibility that your hips are the cause of some of these symptoms that you're experiencing. So how about we pull that hip down, create a level platform for that spine to work off of, and the rest of the body, and see what happens to those symptoms. And I've had good luck helping to ease symptoms, if not eradicate symptoms, once we get those hips to level out.